Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're talking gambling. Specifically, we're going to talk about how, despite all of the winners you see online and all of the "we had an X-winner" signs you see in your local convenience stores, the lottery, casinos, and even your Friday poker nights with the guys are just traps designed to keep you poor. Argue with me all you want, but this video is going to have some straight facts that are going to blow your mind. Believe me. But before we get into it, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. First, let's talk about how the gambling trap is set. That is, how your exposure to gambling as a child can make you more or less likely to gamble as an adult. I think of this like having parents who chain smoke in the house. Some people will hate it so much that they never touch a cigarette. Others will start stealing their mom's smokes out of her purse at age 12. So, let's say you grew up surrounded by gambling 24/7. Maybe your parents bought scratch-offs every day. Or you lived on a street where people were always throwing dice or playing cards. When you grow up like this, gambling is normalized. And depending on how it impacts you and your family, you'll either see it as just another part of life, or as something to be avoided at all costs. Like, if your parents were problem gamblers who couldn't pay the rent half the year, you probably aren't going to be a scratch-off addict, right? But maybe they won once in a while and bought you a new bike. When that happens, you can start to see gambling as a way to get a quick injection of cash. Then, boom, you're hooked. But what if you're on the opposite side? What if you grew up being told gambling was terrible and you should never ever do it? Well, in that case, you have to take into account how we all react to our parents. Whenever we get that talking to from mom and dad, one of two things happen. We either listen, or we find ourselves unable to resist that forbidden fruit. Don't date that girl or guy. Don't hang out with those kids. Some of us are just programmed to do the opposite of what we're told. So instead of being normalized, gambling is romanticized for you. So even having never been exposed to it, you might still try it out and get hooked. So, when I say gambling is a trap designed to keep you poor, now, let's talk about why you should avoid the trap in the first place. Fact: gambling is always a problem. Even Gamblers Anonymous will tell you that not everyone who gambles has a gambling problem. But I don't see it that way. Why? Because, again, I see it as a way to keep you poor. To me, gambling is something that costs you money no matter how often you do it, what you bet on, etc. Think about it this way. You buy a burger for $5, and you're less hungry. You pay $1,200 in rent each month, and you get a place to stay and keep your stuff. You buy a Mercedes for $75K, and you get an awesome car. You buy a scratch-off for $5, and lose. You get nothing. See what I mean? All you did was spend the money. If you don't win anything or win less than you spent on the ticket, that is a 100% non-refundable net loss. Now, imagine you buy a $5 ticket once a week, or maybe twice. That's $260 or $520 a year gone. Maybe you buy a ticket once a day to increase your odds of winning. That's $1,825 a year that you can't get back. And it's not just scratch-offs. You could be at a casino or hitting up one of those games of skill at the gas station. You could be betting on sports. Either way, it all adds up to you spending tons of money and getting little to nothing back. Sure, you might win a few times to reduce that, but the odds say that you're going to lose much more often. This brings me to my next reason why gambling is a trap. Fact: the odds of winning big are insane. Gambling is an industry, and like other industries, it's designed to make the people who run it money. For instance, gambling generates more revenue than movies, spectator sports, theme parks, cruise ships, and the music industry combined. You don't pull in that sort of money by putting the odds in favor of the players. Do people win? Yeah, sometimes. But the only people that always win are the ones who run the game. For instance, your chances of winning the top prize on a slot machine are anywhere from 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 34 million. Now, it's true that slots are designed to return a certain amount of cash to the player, so if you pump $100 into a slot machine, it's supposed to pay back around $97 of that. But there are no rules as to when that money comes back. It could go to you, the next person, or the 1,000th person to play after you. The Mega Millions jackpot? The odds of winning are like 1 to 250 million or more. That's almost the entire population of the United States. But since they offer the biggest prize for the cheapest ticket cost, it's easy to play week after week without thinking about how much money you're literally throwing away. Estimates say that Americans spend around $80 billion every year on the lottery. So even though the jackpots can get really high sometimes, they're only giving back a fraction of the total we all put in. Still, every time someone wins, they put their face on the news and talk about how they never thought it would happen to them. All of that is specifically designed to keep you thinking, if it could happen to them, it could happen to me. Now, you might be saying, okay, so I see where gambling isn't exactly a great investment, but I don't see how it's a trap. Well, fact. Gambling is addictive. When cigarettes had to stop advertising back in the 90s, it didn't affect their business one bit. Why? Because nicotine is addictive. They weren't worried about people still smoking, because all they had to do was get people to try it once. A certain amount will always get hooked. Gambling is presented as a game, and it kinda is. But the reason we enjoy games is that they stimulate the reward center of our brains. That's why it feels so good to get a kill streak in a Call of Duty match, score a touchdown, or beat one of your friends at Monopoly. But here's the deal. When you play those games, you aren't spending money to get that reward. You don't pay $1 per every bullet in Call of Duty, and you don't tip the quarterback to throw the football your way. But if you want to gamble, you have to pay. And as you get more and more invested in the game, the more you're going to crave that mental stimulation that comes from playing. The worst part? You don't even need to win to become addicted. You just need to think you might win. Then it doesn't matter how deep in the hole you are, your brain is going to force you to keep chasing that reward. Which brings me to my last point. Fact. Gambling lets you think you're in charge. Even when there is some skill involved, gambling largely depends on chance. That's a problem, because chance can't be predicted ever. I don't care who you are. You can never know what the outcome of a dice roll, blackjack hand, or lottery drawing will be. It's logically impossible because the result isn't caused by anything. Unfortunately, the fact that you might be right and might win keeps you playing and keeps you paying. On top of this, the more people gamble, the more they convince themselves that past events influence future events. It's like saying that just because the roulette ball has landed on red the past 3 times, it has to land on black this time. But it's ultimately random. There's no logic stating the ball has to land on anything in particular. But once you convince yourself that there's some sort of rhythm to it, you keep putting up cash. You start to develop an illusion of control. I mean, we all like to feel as if we're in control of what happens to us, right? That's why we have jobs, buy insurance, or wear our seatbelts when driving. But none of those precautions means that your company won't go under, or your insurance will reject your medical claim, or that somebody won't run a stop sign and plow right into your car. So even if you convince yourself that the slot machine has a win and lose cycle, or the dealer is due for a loss, it doesn't affect the outcome. Nothing you do can change the original odds of the game. And in almost every single case, those odds are far, far from being in your favor. Gambling is a trap designed to keep you poor. Why? Because poor people gamble. Those of us who don't have a lot have the most to gain from a big win at the casino or the lottery. And it doesn't matter how many times you lose, because a certain amount of people can't stop chasing that big win, because they're addicted. If you've ever known anyone who's addicted to drugs or alcohol, that gambling is the exact same. Because it's addictive, there will always be a percentage of society who can't stop themselves once they've started. So whether you're wasting $20 a week on scratch-offs, or blowing your kids' college money at the casino, you've been trapped by the same addiction. And all that addiction wants is more of your money.